Hello, I'm going to read from my memoir, Holding On to Me in Lockdown, which was written over this past year, and I released it in June. I'm going to read 3 vignettes, and the first one is called Omaha. Having retired plus lockdown, there was plenty of time to think and do, so I made a virtual trip back to the town of my birth using Google Maps, its visual of my former duplex home on North 40th, a surprise in its neglected state, though after all these years, I shouldn't be surprised. There is also the innate corrective to any imagined sustained joy of that time. No enduring recalls of happiness stand out, where sitting on the concrete front porch, still there, to watch cars drive past, is a lonely vignette of the days also drifting by. And the corner bakery seems long gone, frustrating a sentimental and pictorial aid memoir of occasional childhood eating pleasures. As an external view, a smorgasbord Christmas in the front room is yet more unreachable, and seeing the fenced-off backyard where a car had flattened my pet garter snake doesn't answer how it had escaped there, assuming I'd not left it to slither around unattended. It is also on the corner at Hamilton Street where I feel the most cheated in the visiting, unsure which of the shops used to be Martin's Donuts, only assuming it directly on the bend where as a 6-year-old I pulled my red wagon part filled with toys to panhandle for the price of a chocolate-topped ring. And on the Google Maps I found this picture of that home, still there. The second piece I'm going to read is called Ruskin College. Attending a civic college to study A-levels, I was happy for having a place to be back in my UK home, escaping the small town near Flint, Michigan, where my life had been threatened. English was my favorite subject, being an aspiring writer. Geography was a filler, and I was dismissed from this for misbehavior on a field trip to Buxton Gorge, and my third of economic and social history was taught by 2 communists. I reveled in the radical take on the poor laws and enclosure, not that these needed any finessing to the left, and was surprisingly interested in learning about the historical significance of Stephenson's rocket. I will never forget and always appreciate the experience of a 2-day event a friend and I attended at Ruskin College, Oxford, with our pair of teachers. We'd been selected for our clear, radical sensibilities, and although I cannot recall any of the lectures that weekend, I have the fondest memories of nights drinking pints of ale and sharing bread and cheese meals, communing with the more adult attendees who sang and played folk songs of proletarian injustices, as well as protest and revolution I felt increasingly prepared to incite whenever getting the call. I failed my A-level, but on retaking managed a grade D. I did achieve an A for English, my best exam essay, I suspect, being a response to a question about the exchange of letters between Dorothea and Casaubon in Middlemarch, genuinely the only part of that ridiculously huge exam tome I had read. And thus my lifelong rejection of external exams as a fair way to test somebody's understanding. The final piece is perhaps a more wistful piece. These are scattered throughout the text, which isn't chronological in narrating a lifetime. The thrust of the writing is from beginnings to where I am now, but they do dance about, and the vignettes are pieces that can be dipped in and out of. That's certainly the intention. So this final piece I'd like to read now is called A Whispering. The fallen leaves were birds lifting heads in the wind, and I could also see a snake jump out of the ground. It was absurd, so easily deceived, and I asked myself if these were a consequence of flashbacks or age. Karis and a friend were older too, but spiraled happily down a twisting slide in the park I had brought them to. And from my car, out of the cold, I continued to watch the metamorphosing, watch these girls for a moment who were not embarrassed by playing. Perhaps it was reading Brodsky on imminent death, how he could hear each moment whisper as it slides by, and I was trying to play like the other children who hadn't yet had to listen, but knew of this acceptance. One day. And for those who don't know me, and you may well have picked it up by hearing the accent, I'm an American. I've lived all of my adult life here in the UK, coming first in 1967, and I acquired permanent residential status in 1976. And of course, my book reflects on my American beginnings, my reasons for leaving, and all of the many things I have enjoyed in my decision to stay here in the UK. More details about the book and where it can be purchased you can find on Twitter at Omaha Glenn. That's OMAHAGLENN.